The great hall of Station Prime stretched farther than most beings could see. Crystal pillars rose toward a ceiling that showed the actual stars outside, making everyone inside feel very small. 847 seats formed a massive circle, each one designed for a different species. Some seats looked like pools of water. Others were made of living fire. A few were simply clouds of gas held in place by invisible walls. For 3,000 years, the Galactic Concord had governed from this place. Every known civilization sent a representative. Every voice mattered. Every seat was filled, all except one. Seat 848 sat empty near the eastern arc of the chamber. It was a simple chair made of dark metal and blue fabric. Nothing special about its design. Nothing broken about its systems. The environmental controls worked perfectly, set to conditions that would be comfortable for its intended species. The seat belonged to Earth, to humanity. And in over 600 years, no human had ever sat in it. Ambassador Velthrin noticed the empty chair on his first day at Station Prime. He was a tall creature with silver skin and 4 arms. Newly appointed to serve the Orithari Dominion in the historical archives, his job was simple: organize old records, preserve ancient treaties, stay out of important business. But the empty chair bothered him. He asked his supervisor about it during his second week. The older Orithari simply waved 2 of her hands and told him not to worry about things that did not concern him. He asked a colleague from the Merchant Guild during his 3rd week. The insect-like being made a strange clicking sound and walked away without answering. He asked one of the cleaning, and even the machine seemed to hesitate before saying it had no information on that subject. Velthrin was not a suspicious person by nature. But when everyone refuses to answer a simple question, even the most trusting soul begins to wonder why. He started spending his evenings in the deep archives. The records went back thousands of years, covering every species that had ever joined the Concord. He found Earth's file easily enough. The planet sat on the outer edge of the galaxy, a small blue world orbiting an average yellow star. The humans who lived there had achieved faster-than-light travel about 600 years ago. That was the normal part. Every species received an invitation to join the Concord after they developed FTL technology. It was tradition. It was honor. It was the way things had always been done. Earth received their invitation 600 years ago. They acknowledged it, and then nothing happened. Velthrin searched deeper. He found a second invitation sent 50 years after the first. Again, humanity acknowledged receipt. Again, they sent no representative. A third invitation. A fourth. A fifth. He counted them all. 847 invitations over 6 centuries. Every single one acknowledged. Every single one declined. No species had ever refused even once. Joining the Concord meant protection, trade, knowledge, and respect. Refusing meant isolation, danger, and irrelevance. No logical being would choose to stand alone when they could stand with the galaxy, yet humanity had refused 847 times. Velthrin brought his findings to the Council's senior historian, an ancient being called Morphith, who existed as a cloud of glowing particles. Morphith had served the Concord for 900 years and knew more secrets than most species had. Citizens. The cloud flickered when Velthrin mentioned Earth should not dig into this matter, Morphith said. His voice came from everywhere and nowhere at once. But it makes no sense, Velthrin replied. Why would any species refuse membership? What could possibly make them want to stay outside? Perhaps they have their reasons. What reasons? What could justify 600 years of silence? Morphith's particles turned a darker shade of gold. Young Ambassador, there are questions in this universe that have answers nobody wants to hear. Earth is one such question. I strongly suggest you let it remain unasked. But Velthrin could not. The mystery had taken root in his mind like a seed that would not stop growing. He returned to the archives night after night, searching for anything related to humanity. He found scattered references in old reports. A human trading ship spotted near the Frontier Nebula. A human research station detected in the outer darkness. A human medical team appearing on a plague world, curing thousands, and then vanishing before anyone could thank them. The humans were not hiding from the galaxy. They were moving through it constantly. They simply refused to participate in its government. On the 47th night of his search, Velthrin found a file that changed everything. It was buried in the oldest section of the archives, in a folder that had not been opened in over 500 years. The security clearance required to access it was higher than anything Velthrin had ever seen. He should not have been able to open it at all, but the lock was broken. Someone, long ago, had cracked it and never reported the breach. Velthrin opened the file. The document inside was short, just a few paragraphs written in the formal language of the founders. The 12 species who had created the Concord at the beginning of everything. The title made his blood run cold. Protocol Blackwater. Emergency procedures regarding species 848 humanity. He read the first line 3 times to make sure he understood it correctly. In the event that humanity claims their seat in the Grand Assembly, all non-essential personnel are to evacuate Station Prime immediately. Full military escort will be provided. Council operations will relocate to backup Station 7 until further notice.
Ow.
There were more details. Evacuation routes. Emergency supply locations. Communication protocols. Everything needed to abandon the greatest structure in the galaxy on very short notice. All because humans might show up. Velthrin sat in the dark archive for a long time after reading the file. His forehands trembled slightly. His silver skin had gone pale. The Galactic Concord did not fear the devouring swarm which had consumed entire star systems. They did not fear the machine collective, which had nearly ended all organic life. They did not fear the Voidwalkers, who existed between dimensions and followed rules no one
Understood?
but they had a protocol for evacuating their capital if humanity took their seat. What had the humans done to earn such terror? What were they still doing out there in the dark? Velthrin knew he should report his discovery and walk away. He knew he should forget everything and return to his simple job organizing old records. Instead, he copied the file to a secure device, hid it in his robes, and began planning a journey to the edges of council space. If the Concord would not tell him the truth about humanity, he would find someone who would. The empty chair waited in the great hall, patient as stone, keeping secrets older than most civilizations. And somewhere in the vast darkness between stars, humanity continued whatever work had kept them busy for 600 years. The journey to the edge of council space took Velthrin 3 weeks. He traveled on cargo ships and passenger ferries, always paying in cash, always using false names. If the Concord learned what he was doing, his career would end. Possibly his life as well. His first destination was Nexus 7, a space station built around a dying star. The beings who lived there were not made of flesh or metal. They were pure information, minds that existed as patterns of light and electricity. The crystalline minds had watched the galaxy for longer than most species had existed. If anyone knew humanity's secrets, it would be them. The station was cold and dark. Velthrin wore a heated suit and carried lights on all 4 of his arms. The corridors stretched in impossible directions. Following rules of geometry that hurt his brain, he found the crystalline minds in the central chamber, floating like ghosts made of mathematics. "You seek knowledge of the humans," one of them said. It was not a question. The minds knew things before people said them. "Yes," Velthrin replied. "I need to understand why the Concord fears them." The minds flickered. Colors rippled through their forms like emotions made visible. "We have watched the void for 11,000 years," they said together, speaking as one voice. "We have counted every ship that moves through darkness. We have mapped every route that beings travel. And the humans do not travel like other species. They do not announce themselves. They do not register their vessels. They move through places the Council has declared empty, impossible, forbidden.
How?
Velthrin felt his skin grow colder than the station air. How many human ships have you detected? In the last century alone? 47,000. The number hit him like a physical blow. The Council's official records showed fewer than 100 human vessels operating in known space. 47,000 meant a fleet larger than most military powers. Where do they go? He asked. Everywhere. Nowhere. They travel to dead systems and abandoned worlds. They visit species the Council has forgotten. They appear in places where terrible things are happening, and then those terrible things stop happening. What do you mean? The crystalline minds showed him. Images appeared in the air between them, recorded from sensors scattered across the galaxy. A human ship arriving at a world where slavers operated. The ship landing, its crew disembarking. And then, nothing. The recording ended, but when it resumed days later, the slaver compound was empty. Not destroyed. Not damaged. Simply empty, as if everyone inside had vanished. This pattern repeats, the minds explained. We have documented it 912 times. Humans arrive. Problems disappear. Humans leave. They never claim credit. They never leave evidence. But we see them. We always see them. Velthrin thanked the crystalline minds and continued his journey. His next stop was Kethmer, a border world that had nearly been destroyed 2 centuries ago. The devouring swarm had attacked the outer colonies back then, consuming everything in their path. Billions had died while the Council debated how to respond, and then the swarm had stopped. Velthrin found a retired military commander living in a small house near the planet's northern sea. Commander Threll was old now. Her scales faded from green to gray, her eyes clouded with age. But her memory remained sharp. She invited him inside and made him tea. You want to know about the end of the Silence Wars? She said. Everyone eventually wants to know. The official history says the swarm retreated due to internal conflicts. Commander Threll made a sound that might have been laughter or might have been pain. The official history is a comfortable lie. The swarm did not retreat. They were destroyed. By whom? We never knew for certain. But I was there when we found their hive ships. I walked through corridors filled with dead warriors. I saw queens burned in their chambers and eggs cracked open before they could hatch. Her old hands trembled as she lifted her teacup. The swarm had no weaknesses we could exploit. Their ships were organic, impossible to hack. Their warriors felt no fear and took no prisoners. They should have consumed every colony in the Outer Rim before the Council finished writing their first resolution. What stopped them? Someone hit their home fleet. Not just hit them. Destroyed them completely in a single night, with no survivors and no witnesses. We found the wreckage a week later, still burning. Commander Threll set down her cup and looked directly at Velthrin. There was writing on the walls of the main hive ship. Written in the swarm's own blood, using their own bioluminescent fluids. 7 words that I will never forget as long as I live. What did it say? We were watching. Now we have seen enough. Velthrin felt the words settle into his bones. There was no signature, no identification. None, but every commander in the fleet knew. We all knew. The humans had been watching the war unfold. They had seen the Council fail to act. And when enough innocents had died, they decided to act themselves. Why didn't you report this? Commander Threll's clouded eyes seemed to look through him, into some distant memory. Because the Council told us not to. High Command received orders from Station Prime itself. The official story would say the swarm retreated. No mention of human involvement. No investigation. No questions. They covered it up. They did what they always do. They maintained the illusion of control. But I know the truth. The Concord did not save us. The humans saved us. And they never asked for thanks. Velthrin traveled to 3 more worlds after leaving Kethmer. On each one, he found similar stories. On Verith Prime, an assassination had ended a tyrant's reign of terror. The killer was never found, but security footage showed a figure moving through shadows. Clearly human in shape, on the mining colony of Drethfor, a corporation had been using child labor in dangerous conditions. One night, all the corporate executives disappeared. The children were found the next morning, safe and healthy, with enough credits in their accounts to live comfortably forever on the prison moon of Calvith, where political dissidents were tortured. Every guard vanished in a single hour. The prisoners woke up to find the doors open and transport ships waiting to take them home. The pattern was always the same. Humans appeared where terrible things were happening. The terrible things stopped. The humans vanished without a trace. By the time Velthrin returned to Station Prime, he understood why the Concord feared humanity. It was not because humans were violent. Violence was common in the galaxy. It was not because humans were powerful. Many species had powerful weapons. It was because humans had looked at the Galactic Concord as the greatest governing body in known space and found it wanting. They had watched the council debate while innocents suffered. They had seen resolutions passed while children burned. They had witnessed 3,000 years of talking that accomplished nothing, and they had decided to do things differently. The humans did not want a seat at the table because they had no faith in the table. They did not want to join the Concord because they believed the Concord was a failure. So instead of participating in a broken system, they built their own, a shadow system. A silent army that went where the council would not and did what the council could not. Velthrin returned to his quarters and sat alone in the dark for a long time. He had found his answers, but the answers had created even more questions. What was humanity planning now? Why had they stayed hidden for so long? And what would happen to the galaxy when they finally stepped into the light? The empty chair in the Grand Assembly waited, as it had waited for 600 years, but Velthrin could not shake the feeling that the waiting was almost over. The summons arrived 3 days after Velthrin returned to Station Prime. It came not through normal channels, but through a direct communication link that only the highest authorities could use. The message was simple. Report to Chamber Omega immediately. Tell no one. Chamber Omega did not appear on any official map of the station. Velthrin had to follow a series of hidden corridors and pass through 7 security checkpoints before he found it. The room was small compared to the Grand Assembly, but it radiated power. Ancient symbols covered the walls, glowing with soft light. 12 seats formed a circle in the center. The inner circle was waiting for him. These were the eldest, representatives of the 12 founding species, beings who had created the Galactic Concord 3,000 years ago. Some of them looked like they might have existed since the beginning of time itself. Velthrin recognized the Architect of Stars, a creature made entirely of gravitational fields. He saw the Dreaming Mother, whose body contained an entire ecosystem of microscopic life. He noticed the Last Singer, the final survivor of a species that had witnessed the birth of the first galaxies, and in the center seat sat the High Arbiter herself, a being so old that no one remembered what species she had originally belonged to. Her form shifted constantly, never settling on a single shape. Ambassador Velthrin, the High Arbiter, said. Her voice sounded like time itself speaking. You have been asking questions about humanity. There's no point in lying. Yes, High Arbiter, and you have found some answers. Some. Not all. The High Arbiter made a gesture that might have been a nod. Sit. We will give you the rest. Velthrin sat on a chair that appeared beneath him, materialized from nothing. The humans are not our enemies, the High Arbiter began. That is the first thing you must understand. They have never attacked the Concord. They have never threatened our existence. In many ways, they have saved us more times than we care to admit. Then why does Protocol Blackwater exist? The Architect of Stars spoke next, his voice like the rumble of distant thunder. Because we are afraid of what they represent. Not what they do, but what they show us about ourselves. The Dreaming Mother leaned forward, her countless internal organisms glowing through her translucent skin. When the humans achieved faster-than-light travel, they were invited to join us like every other species. They sent a delegation to observe our proceedings. They watched for 1 full year, and then they left. Why? Velthrin asked. It's because they saw what we truly are, the Last Singer answered. His voice was beautiful and terrible at once. They saw a governing body that speaks endlessly and acts rarely. They witnessed debates that lasted decades while populations died. They watched us condemn atrocities with words while doing nothing to stop them. The High Arbiter raised one of her constantly shifting hands. Do you know how many genocides have occurred since the Concord was founded? 712. We condemned every single one. We passed resolutions against every single one, and we stopped none of them. Velthrin felt sick. He had always believed in the Concord, in its mission of peace and cooperation. Surely we have done some good. We have maintained stability, the High Arbiter agreed. We have prevented wars between major powers. We have facilitated trade and communication. But when the weak cry out for help, we offer only words. When the powerless are crushed, we offer only condemnation. We are very good at talking about justice. We are very bad at delivering it. And the humans? Velthrin asked. The humans chose a different path. The architect of stars projected images into the air above their heads. They built a network of hidden bases throughout the galaxy. They trained soldiers and spies and healers. They created a shadow organization with one purpose: to do what we would not. The images showed human operatives dismantling slave markets. They showed human medical teams arriving on plague worlds. They showed human soldiers protecting refugees that the Council had abandoned. For 600 years they have worked in darkness, the dreaming mother said. They have saved more lives than we can count. They have ended more suffering than we can measure. And they have done it all without recognition, without thanks, without a single seat in our assembly. They refused their seat out of principle, the last singer added. Not because they hated us, but because they could not bear to participate in a system that values debate over action. Velthrin struggled to process everything he was hearing. But Protocol Blackwater, the evacuation orders, if you admire them, why do you fear their arrival? The High Arbiter's form flickered, showing something that might have been sadness. Because if humanity takes their seat, everything changes. Right now, they operate outside our laws. They are technically criminals, vigilantes who take justice into their own hands. We can pretend they do not exist. But if they join the Concord, they become legitimate. Their shadow war becomes official policy. And every tyrant, every slaver, every corrupt official who is hidden behind our ineffective laws will know that they are no longer safe. The architect of stars made a sound like grinding stone. Many powerful beings have done terrible things while hiding behind Concord protection. They have made deals with council members. They have bought influence and immunity. They believe they are untouchable. Humanity's presence would threaten them all, the dreaming mother continued. And threatened beings do desperate things. Wars could erupt. Alliances could shatter. The stability we have maintained for 3,000 years could collapse in a matter of months. Velthrin understood now. Protocol Blackwater was not about fear of humanity. It was about fear of what would happen when humanity forced the galaxy to choose between comfortable injustice and dangerous change. Why are you telling me all this? He asked. The High Arbiter leaned forward, her form stabilizing for just a moment into something almost human. Because they are coming. Velthrin's blood went cold. What? Our long-range sensors detected a human vessel 4 hours ago. It is not hidden. It is not trying to avoid detection. It is broadcasting full identification codes and requesting permission to dock at Station Prime. The chamber fell silent. 3,000 years of history balanced on this moment. After 600 years of silence, the last singer said softly, "Humanity is finally coming to claim their seat." Velthrin thought of the empty chair in the Grand Assembly. He thought of all the stories he had heard, all the evidence he had gathered. The humans who saved worlds without seeking credit, the shadow army that protected the innocent while the council debated. "What do you want from me?" he asked. The High Arbiter's form shifted into something that might have been a smile. "We want you to be there when they arrive. You have studied them more than any other member of the Concord. You understand what they represent. When the human ambassador enters this station, we want you to be the first one she speaks to. The ship's registration identifies its captain as Amara Chen. She is coming alone. One human, one small vessel. 600 years of silence about to end." His 4 hands were trembling, but his voice was steady. "I will be there." Good. The High Arbiter's form began to fade, along with the other members of the inner circle. and Velthrin. Whatever happens next, remember that change is not always destruction. Sometimes it is simply the end of waiting. The chamber fell dark around him. Somewhere in the vastness of space, a small human vessel was approaching. And for the first time in 3,000 years, the Galactic Concorde had no idea what would happen next. Velthrin made his way back toward the main docking area, where history is about to change forever. The empty chair was waiting, but not for much longer. The human vessel was small. That was the first thing everyone noticed. The docking bay could hold ships the size of cities, warships capable of burning worlds, diplomatic cruisers carrying thousands of support staff. The ship that landed in the center of the bay was barely larger than a shuttle. Velthrin stood at the front of the gathered crowd, as the inner circle had requested. Behind him, representatives from hundreds of species pressed forward, trying to get a better view. Security forces lined the walls, their weapons ready, but not aimed. No one knew what to expect. The ship's door opened with a soft hiss. A single woman stepped out. Captain Amara Chen was smaller than Velthrin had imagined. She stood perhaps 5.5 feet tall, with dark hair pulled back from a face that showed both strength and weariness. She wore a simple uniform with no medals or decorations. Her only equipment was a small device on her wrist and a datapad in her hand. She looked at the crowd of alien beings surrounding her and smiled slightly. "Ambassador Velthrin," she said. Her voice was calm and clear. "I understand you have been looking for me." Velthrin stepped forward, his four hands pressed together in the traditional greeting of his people. "Captain Chen, on behalf of the Galactic Concorde, I welcome you to Station Prime." "Thank you. I apologize for taking so long to accept your invitation. We have been busy." There was no arrogance in her words. Just simple truth. The Grand Assembly convened within the hour. Every seat was filled for the first time in over a century. Representatives from all 847 member species crowded into the Crystal Hall, their attention focused on a single point. Seat 848, the empty chair that had waited for 600 years. Captain Chen stood beside it. Not sitting, simply standing with her hands clasped behind her back. The High Arbiter called for order, and slowly the massive chamber fell silent. "Captain Amara Chen of Earth," the High Arbiter announced. "You have requested to address this assembly. You may speak." Captain Chen stepped forward. She did not look nervous. She did not look proud. She looked like someone who had carried a heavy weight for a very long time and was finally ready to set it down. 3,000 years ago, she began, the founders of this Concorde created something remarkable. A place where all species could gather as equals. A system for resolving conflicts without war. A promise that the strong would protect the weak and the wise would guide the foolish. She paused, letting her words settle over the crowd. "My people received your invitation 600 years ago. We sent observers to watch your proceedings. We studied your history. We examined your record." Captain Chen's expression did not change, but something in her eyes grew harder. "In 3,000 years, how many genocides has this council stopped?" The chamber was silent, not condemned, not expressed concern about, not passed resolutions against. Actually stopped. How many? Still nothing. The answer is 0. 712 genocides since the Concorde was founded. Not one of them was prevented by action from this assembly. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Several representatives shifted uncomfortably in their seats. How many tyrants has this council removed? How many slave markets has it closed? How many children has it saved from suffering? Captain Chen shook her head slowly. "You speak beautifully about justice. You write wonderful documents about rights and dignity. And while you talk, people die." She turned in a slow circle, addressing the entire chamber. "We received your invitations, all 847 of them. And each time, we asked ourselves one question. What would sitting here accomplish that we cannot accomplish alone?" Her voice grew quieter, but somehow more powerful. "We did not reject you out of arrogance. We rejected you out of grief. Every moment spent debating procedure in this chamber is a moment when someone, somewhere, is suffering. Someone is being enslaved. Someone is watching their family die. Someone is crying out for help that never comes. Captain Chen walked slowly toward her empty seat. So we made a choice. We decided that we would rather work in darkness than debate in light. We would rather be criminals than accomplices. We would rather save one life today than discuss saving 1,000 lives for the next decade. Gosh. She reached the chair but did not sit. For 600 years, my people have operated throughout this galaxy. We have dismantled slave networks and ended tyrannies. We have protected the weak and punished the cruel. We have answered cries for help that this council pretended not to hear. Velthrin watched her face as she spoke. There was no triumph there. No satisfaction. Only the bone-deep exhaustion of someone who had been fighting alone for far too long. We never asked for thanks. We never claimed credit. We never wanted recognition. We simply did what needed to be done because no one else would do it. Then why are you here now? The question came from a representative Velthrin did not recognize. A tall being with crystalline skin, Captain Chen turned to face the speaker. Because we are done. Confused sounds rippled through the chamber. Not done fighting, she clarified. Done working alone. For 6 centuries, we have built something. A network of stations and ships and operatives scattered across every corner of this galaxy. We call it the Aegis. She touched her wrist device, and a massive holographic display appeared above the assembly. It showed the galaxy in stunning detail, with thousands of points of light marking locations. Hidden response stations positioned to reach any distress signal within hours instead of months. Sleeper ships carrying medical supplies and emergency personnel. Automated defense systems protecting vulnerable populations. A web of protection covering every inhabited world in known space. The representative stared at the display in shock. The scale of it was almost impossible to comprehend. The Aegis network is complete. After 600 years of construction, it is finally operational. And that is why I am here today. Captain Chen looked at the High Arbiter directly. We built this because we did not trust you to protect the innocent. We worked in secret because we knew you would try to stop us. We refused your seat because we could not bear to participate in a system that valued procedure over people. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. But we cannot maintain this alone forever. The galaxy is too big. The needs are too great. If the Aegis is going to work, if it is going to truly protect everyone who needs protection, we need partners. Captain Chen finally sat down in seat 848. The chair that had been empty for 600 years now held its first human occupant. I am not here to apologize for what we have done. I am not here to ask permission. I am here to offer you a choice. She looked around the chamber at the hundreds of species watching her with a mixture of fear and hope. You can continue as you always have. You can debate and discuss and pass resolutions while people suffer. Or you can join us. Help us protect the innocent. Help us build a galaxy where justice is not just a word, but a reality. The chamber erupted in chaos. Representatives shouted questions and accusations. Some demanded that Captain Chen be arrested. Others called for immediate cooperation. The High Arbiter tried to restore order, but the noise was too great. Through it all, Mara Chen sat quietly in her chair, waiting. She had delivered her message. Now the galaxy had to decide what to do with it. Velthrin watched her face and saw something he had not expected to see. Hope, despite everything, despite 600 years of working alone in darkness, despite facing an assembly that might reject everything she had built, Captain Amara Chen still believed that the galaxy could be better. And for the first time in his life, Velthrin found himself believing it too. The chaos in the Grand Assembly lasted for 3 days. Representatives screamed at each other across the chamber. Alliances that had stood for centuries cracked under the pressure of revelation. Some species demanded that humanity be expelled from the Concord before they had even truly joined. Others called for immediate integration of the Aegis network into council operations, and through it all, Captain Amara Chen sat quietly in seat 8, answering questions when asked, providing evidence when challenged, but never raising her voice or losing her calm. Velthrin barely slept during those 3 days. He moved between factions, listening to arguments, trying to understand the shape of what was happening. The galaxy was experiencing something it had never faced before, a genuine choice about what kind of civilization it wanted to be. On the morning of the fourth day, the High Arbiter called for a special session. The chamber was packed tighter than ever before. Before we continue, the High Arbiter said, "I believe Captain Chen has additional information to share with this assembly." Amara Chen stood and walked to the center of the chamber. She looked tired, but determined. Over the past 3 days, many of you have accused humanity of acting without authority, of taking justice into our own hands, of operating outside the law. She paused. You are correct. We did all of those things. Angry murmurs rippled through the crowd. But before you condemn us, I want to show you what we found while operating in darkness. She activated her wrist device again. New images appeared above the chamber, slave markets of the Korth Syndicate. Our operatives dismantled them 6 months ago. 40,000 beings freed from bondage. The Concord had known about these markets for 200 years. You passed 17 resolutions condemning them. You imposed sanctions that the Syndicate ignored. The slaves remained in chains until we broke those chains ourselves. The images shifted. The Evreth genocide. Your records call it a tragedy of the past. But the Evreth are not extinct. 12,000 survivors lived in hiding, hunted by the forces that destroyed their homeworld. We found them. We moved them to a protected planet. We gave them a chance to rebuild. More images appeared. Refugee camps being evacuated. Children being fed. Medical teams treating the wounded. A century of screaming on Altheron 5. Your history says the conflict ended naturally. The truth is that we ended it. Our operatives infiltrated both sides and eliminated the leadership that kept the war going. Peace came not because of negotiation, but because the people who wanted war were no longer alive to wage it. Captain Chen lowered her device. The images faded. I do not tell you these things to boast. I tell you because you need to understand something important. While this council debated, my people acted. While you passed resolutions, we saved lives. The question you must answer now is simple. Do you want to keep debating, or do you want to start saving lives too? The chamber fell silent. Then slowly, one representative stood. It was the ancient being from the Dreaming Collective, a species known for their wisdom and neutrality. Her voice carried across the chamber like music. For 3,000 years, we have told ourselves that peace requires patience, that justice requires process, that stability matters more than individual suffering. She turned to face the other representatives. Captain Chen has shown us the cost of that belief. Millions dead while we talked. Billions suffering while we debated. She walked toward the center of the chamber and stood beside Captain Chen. I am tired of talking. I am tired of stability that protects the powerful and abandons the weak. If humanity is willing to lead, then my people are willing to follow. Another representative stood, then another, then dozens more, one by one. Species that had been part of the Concord for centuries rose to support the humans they had never trusted, not because they believed humanity was perfect, not because they agreed with everything the Shadow War had done, but because they were finally ready to admit that something had to change. The vote was called that afternoon. It was not a vote on whether to accept humanity into the Concord. That had already happened when Amara Chen took her seat. It was a vote on something much bigger, a complete restructuring of the Galactic Concord itself. The new charter was simple. The Council would no longer simply condemn injustice. It would act against injustice. The Aegis network would be integrated into official operations. Response times would be measured in hours, not years. And at the head of this new order would be humanity. The species that had shown everyone else what was possible when words became actions. The vote passed with 87% support when it was announced. Velthrin found himself standing beside Captain Chen in the suddenly quiet chamber. You did it, he said. After 600 years, you changed everything. Captain Chen shook her head slowly. We did not change anything. We simply showed what was already possible. The change came from everyone else deciding they wanted something better. Why now? Why reveal yourselves at this moment? She was quiet for a long time before answering. because we could not do this alone anymore. The Aegis is vast, but the galaxy is vaster. For every slave market we closed, 2 more opened somewhere else. For every tyrant we removed, another rose to take their place. We have been fighting a war against suffering itself, and suffering always has more soldiers. She looked out at the representatives who were still milling about the chamber, discussing what had just happened. We needed partners. We needed the galaxy to stop watching and start helping. The Aegis gave us the tools, but tools are useless without hands to wield them, Elthrin understood. Humanity had not stayed hidden out of fear or pride. They had stayed hidden because they were not ready. They had spent 6 centuries building something that could survive exposure, something strong enough to withstand the chaos that would follow revelation. What happens now? He asked. Now we work together. Captain Chen smiled slightly. It will be messy. There will be failures. Some species will resist. Some will try to corrupt what we have built. But for the first time in 3,000 years, this council will do something more than talk. Over the following months, Velthrin watched the transformation unfold. Human operatives trained council forces in rapid response techniques. The Aegis network's hidden stations opened their doors to allied species. Communication systems were upgraded to receive distress signals from anywhere. In the galaxy, the first test came 3 months after the vote. A small world on the edge of council space reported that raiders were attacking their settlements. Under the old system, it would have taken years for the council to respond. Debates would have stretched on. Resolutions would have been drafted and revised. Instead, a joint human Concord task force arrived within 6 hours. The raiders were captured or driven off. The settlement was saved. And for the first time in galactic history, the beings who had cried for help received an answer that was not just words. Velthrin was there for that mission. He stood beside Amara Chen as they watched the rescued families embrace each other, weeping with relief. Is this what you imagined? He asked her. When you first decided to build the Aegis, is this what you hoped would happen? She thought about the question for a long time. I imagined a galaxy where no one had to suffer alone, where crying out for help meant someone would actually come, where justice was not a debate, but a promise. She watched a child run into her mother's arms. I did not know if we would ever get there. I only knew we had to try. Velthrin looked back at the grateful faces surrounding them. Representatives from 5 different species worked together to distribute supplies and treat the wounded. Human medics helped alien doctors. Alien soldiers shared meals with human operatives. It was not perfect. Nothing would ever be perfect, but it was better than what had come before. The galaxy trembled when they realized why Earth's seat was empty, Velthrin said quietly. They thought they were afraid of what humanity had done in the shadows, and now, Velthrin turned to face her. Now they understand. They were not afraid of humanity's actions. They were afraid of their own reflection. You showed them what the galaxy could be. You showed them what they had failed to become. And that is more terrifying than any weapon ever built. Captain Amara Chen, first human representative to the Galactic Concord, commander of the Aegis Network, and the woman who had changed everything, simply nodded. Good, she said. Fear of failure is the first step toward doing better. And we have a lot of better left to build. Above them, the stars shone cold and distant, as they always had. But for the first time in 3,000 years, those stars were watched by a civilization that had finally decided to deserve them. The empty chair was empty no longer, and the galaxy would never be the same.